the 25th of May 2022. Welcome, everybody. You can finally relax and start learning. This is the Nuclear Scumbag Show, and I'm Dana Durnford. You can call if you got questions. You had a fight with your goldfish. You name it. Give me a call and I can help you out. I will. 709-589-4406. So you got a lot of whales dying for the last 11 years. And recently we're seeing sperm whales dying right around the world in places they're not supposed to be. And the show's a half an hour late tonight. I apologize. I kind of warned everybody because I'm moving shop. And I feel like I got a 900-pound gorilla on my back here tonight. And my rib cage, got a kink in my rib cage. Been moving all day. It's gonna take 6 or 7 days. My God. Just the thought of it makes me sick to my guts. I'm not gonna be able to do it 6 or 7 days in a row. I gotta come up with some kind of solution, I guess. These are the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's just a death cult. It's not an actual agency. It's 195 militaries that have ganged up on the species and humanity. The head of the International Atomic Energy, Agency, current demon-in-chief, Rafael Grossi, has said at the Constipated Party, United Nations COPs 26 last year, that no one died from radiation in Fukushima. And that's what everybody done. They blew up laughing when he said it. Everybody got the joke, except it's not a joke. Adult sperm whales found dead just days after a calf dies in Florida Keys. That was the 11th of May. The 18th of May, human pollution likely killed a 47-foot sperm whale. Likely. Shouldn't say anything until you got proof. Dead sperm whale washes up in Tel Aviv on the 20th of May in Scumbag, Israel. Dead sperm whale washes ashore in Philippines on the 23rd. Another dead whale washes ashore. I'm not even sure. Sperm whale dead in the Florida Keys, had trash in his stomach. Can't find any food, see? Enormous beached whale, these are all emaciated is what we're seeing. Rescued in China, which is a first, I think, for a sperm whale. A dwarf sperm whale in Cork, Ireland. And foundation in Ireland that covers the stuff are decrepit scumbags. That was the 2nd of February. I'm sorry. I got that mixed up, did I? Yeah, that one's supposed to be down here. In that order. Dead sperm whale in Cork on the Irish coast. The warm waters linked to climate change. Like, the United Kingdom is just despicable, brainwashing scumbag in the universities, the medias, and the government. I've never seen anybody likable in the industries in United Kingdom. May have been the reason. Yeah, they could have been out partying all night, and that's why. Everything has to be climate change. If you get pulled over for driving, you tell the police officers, hey, I was speeding because of climate change. And if If your boss asks you why you're late because you got a ticket, you don't say I got a ticket. You say, well, climate change. And the boss will be like, of course it is. When the wife says, how come you can't get it up tonight? Honey, it's climate change. 8 more sperm whales washed up dead in Germany. Now, this was 2016. 10 sperm whales in 2020. These all starved to death, by the way. 10 washed up on a single beach. Emaciated. They ran out of squid. 24th of December 2020, the end of December. Rarely seen, and were almost certainly looking for food. It came out after they had starved to death. The most recent event to scale England's east coast, January 2016, on England's east coast, when 6 sperm whales died after becoming stranded. Well, they starved to death. 2016, 8 sperm whales washed ashore in Germany that same year. 6 on a beach in Ireland. A couple of years later, there was 10 on the beach. And in Germany, and we see this in Australia and New Zealand too, by the way. 2 minke whales a few days ago up by Montreal, Canada. 2 minke whales. And that's several hundred miles away from fresh or salt water. That's pure fresh water. That's way up in interior of Canada. Only since Fukushima. The elephant in the room is Fukushima radiation when it comes to the Pacific Ocean die-offs. And we're seeing this symmetrically through all the species. And we've done research expeditions for 6 years to Alaska. So I think, I deserve to be heard. Killer whales dying along the Pacific coast, sick and emaciated. Even owls hemorrhaging along the coastlines. A mortality event began 8 months after Fukushima. It's very poor condition, badly emaciated when arriving in the Pacific. Badly emaciated. Pelicans are starving to death, killing baby birds for food. And we've seen, the couple of years before that, it was like 20,000 breeding pairs, only had 3 hatchlings. There was no food. Mass deaths of sea lions, dolphins, birds, calling it a brain. Caribou mortality very high after Fukushima, low survival rate. Giant whales found dead and drowned down the Pacific coast. 25 carcasses in a single month. Definitely a pulse of death. Continuing trends of whales washing ashore, emaciated. 0 babies survived on the islands, usually over 15,000. Extremely poor breeding success. That's birds they're talking about. Marine mammals all along the California coast infested with parasites, emaciated, extremely emaciated. Carts filled with dead bodies, emaciated, May 17, 2015. Babies being found severely emaciated, a mortality event declared by the degenerate government on the West Coast, a bizarre die-off. Just the tip of the iceberg, which was correct, obviously. Unprecedented, largest animals on earth found dead on the West Coast, sick and emaciated. Mind-blowing die-off of seabirds. There was a million Cassini auklets showed up on the coastline, the West Coast of North America, emaciated. And it was 1.4 million at the same time, common murres, and they dive 600 feet all day and feed on anchovies, sardines, squid, krill, and stuff like that. They showed up emaciated. These were serious pulses. Every bird we're seeing is starving to death. Mind-blowing. 100% death rates of baby seals on the California coast. None survived. Starving. Unprecedented die-off of nearly endangered marine mammals. More have washed up in the last few months than during all of recorded history combined. Nuclear industry, nothing happening. Fearmonger, and now the entire coast is affected, whole populations. Animals of all ages are sick, not just the newborns. Walking skeletons. So hungry they gone on rocks with their skin hanging off. Well, like the seals and sea lion pups, if they get separated from their mother, they usually crawl up on the beaches. And the beaches would normally be just nothing but food everywhere. And so they would just eat, and sometimes there's rocks. And then they would excrete the rocks because they have so much nutrition. But they're finding them with just rocks and emaciated. Countless dead birds reported in the Pacific. Nothing will eat the bodies. Salmon covered in funguses, lesions, big gaping sores. We've also seen a black fungus that has affected all the species on the west coast when I was doing the research. Corpses of sea lions, birds, sea turtles, baby gray whales, 13 baby gray whales and 55 dolphins dead. Rash of dead humpbacks. Mysterious deadly black fungus, yeah, and in the Pacific Northwest. And I had a lot of people talking about me. When they found out what I was doing, they were like, "Do you think that's Fukushima?" And I said, "You think it most likely has to be, unfortunately." Highly contaminated marine snow covered the seafloor at least 2,000 kilometers from Fukushima. July 2011, of course, I'll show you, the plumes covered the whole planet in about 16 days. They're wearing tungsten vests, the homeless is, not nuclear scientists. They're not going to Fukushima. That's why we got a poll tonight, by the way. Are nuclear coward scientists cowards for not cowardly going to the cowardly Fukushima, cowardly nuclear, cowardly meltdowns, cowardly site for the last 11 years? Let me try that again. Are nuclear scientists cowards for not going to Fukushima nuclear meltdown site for 11 years? And I was just trying to convey the irony, because people think nuclear scientists are cool. They're the furthest thing from cool. They're degenerate scumbags. I mean, they had to create the Spider-Man and the Hulk to try to make the industry look presentable to the children. Of course, then the brainwash the children is whoever created that should be arrested for crimes against humanity for sure. Significant high levels may be spread during decommissioning work. It's just the most vulnerable of society doing it, and so significant is not the right word. It's guaranteed. Nuclear scientists are not going to Fukushima. Nuclear students or academics or nuclear experts or nuclear corporations, universities, nuclear professors, none of them are going to Fukushima prefecture, let alone the nuclear meltdown site. Weekends off at Fukushima, not one plant worker could be seen. That's because of the radioactive fog haze chased everybody away. The China syndrome, when it comes into contact with water, it detonates and it splits the earth, and the steam that's coming up is lethal. You have to evacuate the site because the whole site is covered in lethal plumes of radiation that you can only see in the right conditions. This went on for years. The industry is just, it's a useless industry. It's an industry definitely ready for the wood chipper. Decontamination workers not showing up. Went from 33 companies of homeless and destitute and victims of society and immigrants who don't speak the language down to 2. Worries are growing. Every rainfall brings a new batch of radioactivity. Radiation levels higher after decontamination. Like the whole story is just, it's crazy. Over 30,000 square kilometers in Japan are highly connected. 30,000 square kilometers is unbelievable. And of course, they never stopped growing food there. No one would take it, only Canada. Kind of like, pick us. We'll take your radioactive food. You don't need to check it. Put your Geiger counters away. We hate Canadians. Ship it here. Ship it over here, Japan. We don't give a shit about Newfoundland or British Columbia or Canada. Fukushima plume model at 1 million becquerels, which was really low, because when you think about how much actually came through, I mean, there was 20 million particles of iodine-131 per liter rainfall. This is a plume model of just 20 days. That was xenon, that plume model. And 129 iodine with, 220 million atoms. So it saturated the atoms of all the species. And then they start producing radioactive hormones. And your children and your friends and your families and your loved ones. And the birds and the animals and the mammals. It's a genocide. Here's France got it right. This is a 16-day model from the French government of radioactive fallout. Bloop, bloop. It's a continuous plume, and the scary part about that is it doesn't stop. The model stopped at 16 days. The radiation didn't stop coming out, and it probably won't for 10,000 years. It's a full-blown extinction event. Could be out of control for at least 100 years. That's pretty optimistic. It's a global problem, not just a Japanese problem. Denial and cover-up are clearly not working. Well, the plume doesn't care if you lie. It's still coming. So you got all these whales dying worldwide of the same species. They mostly feed on giant squid. So bye-bye. If they can't find them anywhere worldwide. So we've done research expeditions year after year just to get you up to that. That thing used to beat the shit out of me every day. We go out for 4 to 5 months without coming home. And we do research by counting the species above and below the water. And the species to your left, this is why all the birds are dying also, because when they fly along the coastline, normally the coastline looks like the left. Now it's the right. These are before and after pictures. And it's a complete extinction event. I don't understand why the world is still sucking their thumbs and pretending that everything's going to be okay. I don't understand how the nuclear industry has been able to get away with it for so long. That's not acceptable. The right thing to do is hang every pro-nuclear creature on the planet just to be safe. Don't take any chances. I mean, if you're going to be a nuclear anything, you should be sterilized so you can't have children. Because the last thing we need is them teaching their children to be death cult monsters too. So all the species are exterminated. So when the birds fly along the coastline, there's nothing to eat. That's a typical day. Low tide, once or twice a day. And then at the end of the day, you're just miserable. All you want to do is drive a screwdriver in your eyeball and go to sleep. Yay. That's a normal day. U.S. releases environmental study for a small modular reactor that doesn't exist. Must be nice, eh? See, how can you do an environmental study on something you don't know how it's going to perform? How does that work? There's no checks and balances. It's not like the International Atomic Energy here. It's got to be checks and balances. Or the U.S. Department of Energy. Earlier this month, released the Hounds and the environmental impact statement for versatile test reactor. You know you lost the planet when you start naming shit like that. That would be the first new test reactor built in the United States of America in decades. Why don't you just give us a date? Because it's embarrassing, Dana. Plans call for building the reactors at the Energy Department's 890 square mile nuclear wasteland that also includes the degenerate Idaho National Laboratory by the end of 2026. Oh yeah, that's going to happen. Does anybody really think they're going to pull that off by 2026? After all these years of covering this? Yeah, right. Construction, it took them 43 years to build Watts Bar, for goodness sakes. Construction of the proposed reactor depends on funding from Congress. Oh, and they can't get insurance on these things. And there's no checks and balances because it's on a big nuclear wasteland. 890 square mile wasteland. The industry is nothing but vultures, eh? There's no one there that's innovative at all. They're running on obsolete technology and hand-me-down blueprints. The environmental impact statement notes the reactors would produce spent nuclear fuel beyond 2035, which is past the deadline the Energy Department has with Idaho concerning spent nuclear fuel at the site. So claiming that they're going to clean up the Idaho National Laboratories, where are you going to move the fuel to? Okay, so if Russia attacks, because Russia's saying they're going to just split the United Kingdom in two with a couple of nukes, 90 million fatalities in hours. There's over 9 million simulations ran since February on this machine. Because anybody can do it. Horror simulation shows how experts think nuclear war will unfold. These are crazies. I got the video here. So this is America and Russia having a nuclear exchange. So there's Russia's, the orange ones, or the getting hit first. There's Russia launching on America. All the missiles are now converging on North America. Don't worry, there's no big scary bangs. So the simulation shows America firing first. America, look, is already blown up Russia before Russia bombs get over. So first strike policy is what they're subconsciously saying. Oh, God. Nuclear power plans raised by Boris Johnson in reply to people asked him about the food bank, and he said, we're getting more nuclear power plants. Yeah, but people are starving. It could take you 20 years to build those stupid big disease factories. So if you look at their latest, greatest itineration of nuclear stupid, or their past ones even, like Sellafield, you can see firefighters at Sellafield nuclear plant. That place is surrounded by farms. And so is Sizewell C. It just defies any kind of rationale that they're going to build it in the prime farmland. Because these places hemorrhage radiation from the fuel pools. the numbers are just unbelievable. Because the fuel is still splitting the atom that would normally boil water for 1 million homes. And every time you put more fuel in it, that means there's more radiation every day hemorrhaging. And so you can put 2 million atoms, physical atoms, on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. So how many atoms does it take to boil water for 1 million homes? It's the Google numbers, see? And so it's basically more atoms than all the stars in the visible universe. Or all the grains of sands and all the beaches worldwide. Pick your choice. And so the fuel pools are producing that each day. Released into the environment each day. From the fuel pools. Because the fuel rods are too fragile to continue to leave in the reactor. Now you got to put it on their water that is going to boil off about 120,000 liters. I showed you earlier liters with 220 million atoms per liter. These are catastrophic numbers for the species and humanity. And goodbye, everybody's future. Boris Johnson must go and no to nuclear. Hear, hear. And the same day we had 2 stories. It just freaks me out whenever I see a nuclear plant surrounded by farms. The government has announced it's going to build lots of more nuclear power stations. They're not going to build jack shit. France has to come and build it for them, for Christ's sakes. And France got half of their reactors are offline. And they're supposed to be having a nuclear renaissance. The expertise don't exist to do what they're claiming, by the way. Of a strategy to become carbon-free. Nuclear is not carbon-free. Kooky weirdo. It's the most expensive form of generating electricity and potentially the most dangerous. And that's being pretty polite. Good for you, mister. You only have to have one reactor to have a problem like Chernobyl, which is like a paper towel compared to Fukushima in Japan. Chernobyl's nasty, man. They closed 9,000 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom. Some are still closed 36 years later, by the way, around 400 of them, from radioactive fallout 3,000 miles away. And there's also the problem of nuclear waste. This was a good story. I'm not yelling at the person who wrote the story, obviously. You got to be some seriously twisted, sadistic, demented engineer to build a nuclear plant in the middle of a major farming area. That's just sick. Because all the food is going to poison people constantly. The very definition of stupid is right there, boy. Yeah, nuclear power plants raised by Boris Johnson. He replies in reply to the food bank. It's just like, really? This is Sellafield? 60 years surrounded by farms. And they had a mixed oxide fuel facility for 60 years there. They had a meltdown in the 50 of a mixed oxide fuel reactor. Not only is it hemorrhaging 8 million liters a day into the Atlantic Ocean for even today, but it's still hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. Surrounded by farms. It just doesn't seem real that somebody would do that. It really doesn't. That the industry, any industry could be that evil. It just doesn't seem real. But hey, there's Boris. This is, if you wonder what happens when an alien has sex with a moose, there's Boris Johnson. Reactors surrounded by farms. Some serious evil. That's unmitigated evil right there. We should also develop things like tidal power. And they're the second biggest tidal flow in the world in the British Channel. Radioactive British Channel. Where they went out and dumped the barrels for 30 years. Nuclear waste for 30 years. Just driving around throwing it off a ship. The moon ceased to exist. The tides will always be here unless the moon ceased to exist. This is Sellafield, nuclear wasteland surrounded by farms. And then everything else runs downhill to the ocean. Like, Britain should just, like, implement an IQ test so that stuff like this doesn't happen. Nuclear power plans raised by Boris Johnson in reply to food bank questions. Yeah, we'll get him some food in about 14 years when we get the power plant up and running. The Prime Minister gave us the thumbs up. I'm surprised half of Britain didn't commit suicide when he got elected. It was like, oh God, the country's dead. Might as well go now. People struggling in Wales, relying on food banks, should take comfort from the UK government's plan for new nuclear power stations, Boris Johnson has suggested. Yeah, because there are going to be more farms surrounded by nuclear to radiate and kill them in increments. They won't have to worry about the food bank in the near future because they ate the food from around these nuclear disease factories, I guess. Does that make sense to anybody? Energy firms have seen profits rocket as prices have soared. Everything but nuclear. We make a historic mistake in not going for enough nuclear. Well, you kind of ran into farmland is the problem, was it? You kooky wackos. UK energy plan and possibility of developing a new, smaller reactor. Between 2020 and 2026, the international energy agencies have forecasted around 5,500 nuclear power plants worth of renewables coming online. 4,800 gigawatts, which is equal to large, not small reactors, but large reactors, 5,500. And so you can see this, when you see the nuclear industry, you see a country talking about small, fabled reactors that don't exist, then you know that that country has been taken over. The media, the institutions, universities, the government agencies have been infiltrated by the nuclear death cult. Because otherwise they would just use common sense and go full renewables. Right, because you can have wind and solar backed up with geothermal tidal energy, backed up with storage like pumped hydro, which is circulatory, and compressed air storage, where you pump air with excess supplies down into storage into caverns at 120 psi. The possibilities, they can't even build a normal reactor, let alone a small modular reactors. It's like you're just sinking your country for no way to survive the future. You're going against everything that you claim. Yeah, there you go. Labeling Wi-Fi and TAS, I don't even know what the frig that word is, as possible new sites for the most dangerous, dirty, radiotoxic, health-threatening, expensive technology is an insult to the people of Wales. Well, there you go. It is the total wrong path to tread, and it may be the case that Johnson will not be in office for too long to realize his madcap nuclear ambitions. He doesn't have nuclear ambitions. He's regurgitating on whatever the lobbyists told him. He's not articulate on this subject or something. He's like, more nuclear, good. That's what you, like, more nuclear, good. That's all he can really say. He's not going to say any technical stuff. He can't tie his own shoes, for God's sakes. The president's job is to shake hands, and the media takes their picture and writes the story the lobbyist tells them. Well, actually, the lobbyist writes the story, the media picks a journalist who's exceptionally a scumbag and gives it to them, puts their name on it, they get a kickback so they can pay the mortgage and get the little bastard child in the university and become another nuclear scumbag. Told chief was protesting about your obesity policy. Well, United Kingdom was just brutalized with radioactive fallout. That's why you've seen obesity. The Prime Minister said, okay, we understand the vital importance of tackling obesity. That's after the lobbyist told him to say it, of course. This is the scariest, stupidest thing imaginable. Grown food right alongside of a disease factory. It's time to end the nuclear industry, whether we do it legally or with baseball bats. I'm not hard to get along with. UN marks the first ever. United Nations is 195 militaries. They have no sovereignty over any country. They can't arrest you. They can't ticket you. They can't fine you. They're just a corporation that 195 countries have been taken over by this military-industrial complex. And they created like the UNICEF and World Health Organization, UNCLEAR and IRPA, the IAEA, all these subsidiary companies, the World Tourist Agencies. They've infiltrated every facet of our life. It's like a true parasite. They're an actual parasite. And now they got a new one. UN marks first ever International Day spotlighting women working in the maritime industry. But like, what's the idea of a military-industrial complex doing something like this? Ray of Hope, the Japanese company is invited to partner with the Irresponsible Atomic Energy Agency to fight against cancer with nuclear. Like, radiation can't cure cancer, okay? It doesn't work that way. It's, you can go to my merchandise shop and you see Stop the Chemotherapy Genocide, because, it doesn't work. Oh, God, hang on. I can't do it all because there's too much. But let me give you an idea. So you go get radiation therapy. That's the scariest word in human history. What the hell? Hang on. Introduction to radiation injuries, another epidemic. So you get radiation therapy because you got cancer. So now you can't see anymore. And it destroys your heart. And it destroys your breast. And radiation-induced cardiac injuries because of breast cancer. From radiation-induced kidney injuries, destroys your kidneys. Hypoxia destroys you. Blood spinal cord barrier disruption, nervous system, radiation injuries. Radiation-induced lung injuries. There's no other chemical on the planet that attacks every organ of your body, everything on your body. Radiation-induced bowel injury. So if you got a tumor, they got a million ways to kill you, and they're guaranteed to kill you because a lot of these are latent. They don't show up for weeks or months. Severe radiation, laser treatment of severe radiation injury of the lower intestinal tract. Severe radiation injury. So you got radiation to get rid of the tumor. It worked. Now you got tumors everywhere else, though. Breast radiation injury litigation. Yeah, there was the breast radiation litigation there was 10 million women who had their breasts removed that didn't need it, that didn't even have breast cancer. That's the industry. They make a lot of money doing that. So, central nervous system radiation injury to the cranial nerves. property protects lungs from radiation-induced injury. Oh, sure it does. What is it, more radiation? Radiation injuries to the head and neck. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced lung injuries and small bowel injuries. Radiation-related breast injuries, intestine syndrome induced by radiation. Radiation-induced brain necrosis. So yeah, the International Energy Agencies, once they love you so much, they want to help you with your cancer. You give your head a shake, and when it falls off, give it a kick. The last thing they want to do is help you. Hang on. So this study on chemotherapy, 3% efficiency of chemotherapy. So the question is, on this based on facts, the original conclusions based on facts, 1985, repeated in 2004, was in Australia was 2.1% would survive with radiation therapy, 2.3% and 2.1% in the US. So the obvious conclusion is perhaps everyone worldwide should contemplate and think of chemotherapy as an alternative route, because it's not successful. It's only 3%. And as I showed you in all the studies, it destroys you. You have no way to survive it. Yeah, we got rid of the tumor, but now your whole friggin' body is wrecked. I apologize for giving this shit and doing all this work and finding all this stuff, because this stuff didn't just come with all the ducks in line like you're seeing. I had to dig through thousands of studies to figure out what the hell I was looking at, and then realize, holy shit, it wrecks your whole body. Well, it's no good saying it. You got to provide the documentation, otherwise it's not true. Everybody else on the planet can have a radio show except for me. Because I'm a big fat liar if I don't provide the documentation. Jacobs, to manage the decommissioning of the reactor. My video last night is just unbelievable censorship. Same with tonight, eh? The industry is scared of the truth. They took down my other site with 24,200 subscribers. And stayed that way for 5 years. Never got an extra or lost a subscriber for 5 years. I had 24,200 subscribers exactly for 5 years. Well, we were out looking for insects and animals and birds and spiders last year. They took my site down when I was far away from home. And I was in real trouble. And Anonymous 3 stepped up and donated $1,000 at that time and saved me, because I was out in the middle of the woods, terrified. The site was gone, no emails, no strikes. They still haven't explained what they... Okay, so a couple of days ago they posted this story and they put a picture of Sugar. Allegedly stood up in his Sunday finest looking at Reactor 2. We've never seen this picture before. Yoshiga Suga, who replaced Shinzo Abe when he finally got bored of poisoning everybody. Inspected. Yeah, he looks like he's inspecting. Look up the word inspecting. It's not walking up. And again, this looks like it's photoshopped as you start to zoom in. But we never seen that picture of Reactor 2, so super important, exceptional. It was high quality. And we've never seen the picture before, yet this is an old picture. So how come we haven't seen this picture before? Because the day before that, I was criticizing him about this. Now, when you zoom into the background, it doesn't match up to what a camera lenses do, right? So they re-photoshopped it, but it looks like it. We've never seen this before. And when you zoom in, like, you know, you can turn off the autofocus on your camera, and you don't get a bird background, right? But you have to manually focus that, of course, which is what they're doing here. Or they got fixed lenses. Right? I have 3 fixed lenses. They don't have a motor, so you have to... Is like the lens we're using right now is a fixed lens. And if I was outdoors, you would see everything would be equal clarity. And I've been at this a very long time, so my consensus is this is photoshopped. And why did Jacobs release this picture? Now, Jacobs is a management organization. They're like TEPCO. They're not physically going to send workers in here or something like this. They're pretending that they're going to get the fuel out of reactor 2, but that had liquefied when China syndrome. The fuel pool and the reactor core. The building actually was the only building that stayed what we call intact, but that was because it did detonate, and this is, again, right, their version of they're going to get the fuel out of the fuel pool, because that's what they're claiming they're going to do with that contraption you're looking at there. You can't go inside of that if that's breaching the building. You can't physically stand on the other side of that without getting an exceptional dose, like a deadly dose. This was built off-site, brought in, and put there with cranes. It's all about deception, right? The industry's a master at it, because I'll give you an example of that. Okay, so do they have a legacy for being deceptive and deceitful and dishonest and disingenuous, Dana? Maybe. So they're pretending that the remains of reactor 4s look like that perfect symmetrical fuel pool to your left.
Now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And
Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident, I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
Well, look to the building to your right. Should you evacuate Tokyo? Right? Should they, did they, would they, could they? The fake reactor 3 you see in the background. So the fake reactor 4, they're showing you reactor 3 in the background. Hang on, I get a picture of reactor 3. She's pretty. You like her. Another bullshit. A story from the bullshitter named TEPCO. The world's greatest bullshitters on the planet is TEPCO. Well, all the nuclear industry, right? So reactor 3 in the back. So they tore all the structure away with cranes. There's only a stump left. Just a stump, right? But the crazies put that cap, 177-foot cap that was built off-site and transported in and built with cranes. I got 2 pictures for you. Three pictures. So what they done was they it originally looked like the fuel pools would be at the very top of the building, and the fuel pools, and the reactor cores rather. It's completely gone. So they stripped it down. Now it was a 190-foot building, so there's only a stump left. So they built this framing around it, doesn't physically touch it, and the cap, this stupid contraption you're looking at there is meant to just, you can't go in there without getting a deadly dose. So they shot all the footage at the mock-up, and then they brought it here, and no one's going inside of that. That's a lethal dose. It was the mixed oxide fuel facility. It's 177 feet tall. And then they pretended this was it, but this was the mock-up, because they built this off-site originally. So they done their footage, and then you got Prime Minister Suga, who criticized TEPCO heavily in 2013, became the Prime Minister, so he had to drop all of that. And so now they're faking the Reactor 4, right? They faked Reactor 3, or Reactor 2. Reactor 2. Right, they faked Reactor 3, they faked Reactor 4. Now they're going to fake the Reactor 2. The plant in this picture, why did they show us a picture in September of 2020? Why did Jacob show us this picture? Because they're getting better at their Photoshop, but they haven't mastered it yet. By the way, Jacobs is liable for the big cold ash cleanup workers lawsuit. Appeals court have said. And what happened was Jacobs, because he got hired by the government, wanted immunity. So if the workers get sick, it's tough luck. So they're despicable. They're perfect for going to Fukushima for the scumbag industry because they're monsters. They got a legacy. Still faces liability for workers' health suits in major coal ash spill cleanup. It managed, again, key words, managed, which is not their workers, it's the coal workers that said the U.S. appeal court ruling they're still liable. Jacobs claims since the TVA's wholly owned government genocide corporation is immune from cleanup liabilities, the engineers should also be liable as its contractors. And the workers be damned, right? The workers not in the equation at all. And we're not liable. Government's not, well, who's liable? Someone's got to be liable. How about if you get injured, you work for Jacob, something happens to you, where is Jacobs liable then? Jacobs to manage decommissioning of the wreck. So again, what you're seeing is, so instead of the nuclear industry, the International Atomic Energy Agency or something like this, they use TEPCO or Jacobs, and that way people are angry at TEPCO or Jacobs for killing the planet instead of the nuclear industry, right? That's what they're actually up to. But the whole story is disgusting. Of course, that's why they get the jobs, because they're disgusting. So Grossi allegedly went to Fukushima. We covered this. The International Atomic Energy Agency did put a video out on their site, had an astounding 81 views and 13 likes. Neither one of them were for me, I guarantee you. So I watched the video. I got it here somewhere. I watched the video. There's a video of this. Oh, there it is. My eyesight is finally gone. Let's watch it. Okay, so this again looks like it's just Photoshop, but give him, because it doesn't look right. There's a Scumbag who said no one died at Fukushima, and now they immediately went to inside. Let's start that off again. So they're showing Reactor 1 in the background. And now that's Reactor 1 again in the background. And that stack there is 25 sieverts at its base. So we're there too. They would get a lethal dose if they actually done that. Right, they have to decommission the stacks too because of lethal doses. But it 100% looks photoshopped. And it's such a close picture. You can't see anything in the background to tell what's going on. And then it flashes to an interior. Then it's showing who knows what the frig it's showing. Now it's showing stupid empty tanks. I'll explain that to you in a second. And again, reactor 1, because they want to pretend they're going to get the fuel out of the pool of reactor 1 and reactor 2. Right? So it's Jacob showed you reactor 2. They coordinated and came up with a picture of reactor 1. And again, the IAEA is monitoring the discharge. Well, who gives a shit what they're doing? They're part of a military-industrial complex. We need independent experts there to verify that TEPCO turned on the light. We need people that can verify that. TEPCO needs to be removed. We got to send in all the nuclear scientists and academics, nuclear students. Not because they're going to fix it, but that's the quickest way to get rid of them. IAEA is monitoring. That's hilarious. Probably their first visit in 11 years on top of that. If they're actually there. It's hard to quantify they're there when they don't show you nothing. Why don't they show you something? Why don't they show you something? Why don't they open the picture up, the video up, instead of a tight cell phone picture? Not even turning it sideways to get the smallest frame possible. At the big shot IAEA can't even go in Panamanic.
Fukushima, Daiichi, there are a number of activities that take place in preparation for the
You shut up, you low-life friggin' subhuman demonic demon,
discharge
you.
Of the water.
You
and
coward.
Here, in this laboratory, one very important...
This is the water, claiming the water. I'll shut up and just let him tell his thing. Here we go.
part of the work is conducted. The discharge of the water that has been accumulated here after the accident has attracted a lot of international attention, and we want to make sure that whatever is done here will be in perfect alignment with the safety standards. As we approach the program date for the discharge of the water, it was for me very, very important to return to
What the frig is he doing on a bus?
Fukushima and to see with my own eyes how the preparations are moving. I've seen enormous progress. I was here before the pandemic a couple of years ago, and I see like this lab, which did not exist before. So everything is being ready or readied for the campaign to start in a few months.
If you gutted him, I guarantee you he won't even bleed. Creatures like that don't actually have blood. He also met with the Prime Minister, who faked, actually, I've done presentations on that, actually faked being at reactor at the Fukushima the second or third or fourth day. Because normally they sacrifice a baby or something when they're elected. IAEA committed to monitoring treated water discharge. These are degenerate scumbags with a legacy of propaganda and disinformation. Okay, so look, in 2013, they had 1,000 tanks. You know how many they got today? 9 years later, 1,000 tanks. So how many new tanks did they build since 2013? They had 1,000 tanks in 2000. I'm really bad at math. They had 1,000 tanks in 2013, 1,000 tanks in 2022. I'm kind of drawing like a zero. But math was never my strongest point unless it's nuclear. So March 2014, they had 1,200 tanks. How many tanks they got 9 years, 8 years after that? 1,000. 2017, Scumbag Australia, they had 900 tanks. Again, I double dare you to walk with both of your feet flat on the ground. I double dare you. If you can do it, I'll quit blogging. I'll never make another friggin' video. I'll take down everything I got, my website and everything. I'll shove the boat up in my ass piece by piece. Live, stream it, every bit of it. Japan will have to dump radioactive water in the Pacific. She's been saying that since 2013. In 2021, they still had 1,000 tanks. So 1,000 tanks 2013, 1,000 tanks 2022. So 9 years later, how many tanks? Now the Riva system, 2014, late 2014, August 2014, the middle of August. For the last 3 years, the system has been unused, which was the filtration system from degenerate French scumbags. And in 2014, in April, the ALPS liquid processing system has yet to function reliably, aka function. The TEPCO, which is not a decommissioning authority, should be done by the people that built it, not by some random corporation. The utility which operated the Fukushima Daiichi plant promised to treat all contaminated water by 2015. A goal it's emitting will not be realized. In 2013, they had 1,000 tanks. And there's certain parts of the site we don't have full control. It's so deadly that everybody drops dead that walks past the line in the sand, right? TEPCO says the groundwater bypass operation is not having an effect. 2014. 2013, they failed to deliver on a promise to install a fence to restrict contamination from actually going into the Pacific Ocean. That's one of the nuttiest statements ever in human history. Oh, we're going to build a fence to stop the radiation from going in the ocean. That's the most ludicrous assertion when you covered the planet with radioactive fallout already. TEPCO asked the government not to announce it because it's going to cost $1 billion. In other words, TEPCO's not supposed to exist. TEPCO's ice wall operation not meeting expectations. They admit the ice wall will not stop the groundwater. And the Americans flew over at 1,000 feet right after the accident, and they were looking at 3 million becquerels per square meter of just iodine, 20 kilometers away from the ongoing. 10,000 years later, they'll be like, yeah, she's still melting down, man. EU Energy Commissioner calls Fukushima an apocalypse, which is the right answer. France says Japan's lost control. The French should leave Fukushima? No. Should leave Tokyo? No. Should leave the country. Well, Fukushima's 500 miles away. Get out of the country. It's a meltdown. Swiss embassy evacuates Tokyo, 220 kilometers away, because, Fukushima. Tokyo's lost almost all control of events of Fukushima. Tokyo. It's supposed to be abandoned, right? And Tokyo's a nuclear wasteland. Nuclear report warns of apocalyptic scenario at Fukushima. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. Korea calls Japan's handling of Fukushima incompetent, which is the right answer. South Korea denies report of alleged approval of Japan's, because Japan came out with headlines. South Korea said, go ahead and dump it. Woo, way to go, South Korea. South Korea's like, no, we didn't. South Korea on Friday denied a Japanese media report claiming the South Korean government agreed to Tokyo's plan to release the radioactive water into the ocean from the... Every time I hear the word cripple, I want to go make someone crippled. That's not healthy, by the way. Earlier the week, a Japanese Scumbag news agency reported that the government, the new UN government, who's gone pro-nuclear on the planet, the nuclear industry is just, it's a disease. It's a plague. It's a nuclear power plants are disease factories. When the World Nuclear News comes out with it, that's officially scumbags at that stage. Unloved since Fukushima, uranium's hot again for miners. For some miners, the big ones maybe, who... So Sprout, spot prices have doubled from the low of $28 per pound last year to $64 in April, but then it dropped back down. Moscow's February 24th invasion of Ukraine spurred a 50% rally. This was so like, on the 24th, Moscow had invaded Chernobyl. The nuclear industry, knowing this is bad, came out and artificially started promoting nuclear. Just any propaganda will do. Get out and say something positive. The whole world is turning on us. Prices have retreated since the peak in April. CEO of Sprout Asset Management. And what they done was they raised money and bought the physical uranium, artificially inflated the stocks. And then they told investors, look, uranium's climbing. And they kept that alive now for about a year. It peaked at 64, went back down to $40 or something. And so a whole lot of investors would have lost their shirts again. And they've done this, since the meltdown started. The Globe and Mail degenerates promoted uranium 3 to 4 times every week. The biggest media in Canada, biggest print, was promoting uranium stocks, despite the fact that they were flatlining. And the industry was able to sell off their uranium stocks that were worthless to unsuspecting victims, that created by the Globe and Mail and now by Sprout, the newest, latest, greatest degenerate industry. UN Nuclear Energy Agency Chief, Fukushima transparency is important. And look who got their name there, Mari Yamaguchi. Go back and look at those headlines on those tanks in 2013, 2014, 2017. Mari Yamaguchi. She works with these right there. Her job is to go out in Associate Press, and then everybody else's job is to regurgitate that narrative. It's 100% fake. The tanks, see, if you fill up the tanks at 2.2 sieverts of beta per liter, there's 1.4 million sieverts of just beta in the tank. It means you can't build another tank because it's too radioactive to get back on the site. So it's all dumped straight into the ocean. The idea of the tanks is to trick you into thinking that the ocean is not being destroyed. That's the only reason that they're built the tanks. And they had 1,000 tanks in 2013 and 1,000 tanks in 2022. By the way, we counted the tanks. There's only 750. But hey, plan approved to remove the Fukushima wastewater. They're showing you the scuttled Reactor 3 building. Fukushima is looking at onshore agricultural demonstration project in, where the hell is that going to be into? Closed loop aqua system in a nuclear wasteland. Nami City. Nami City is a nuclear wasteland. It's an insidiously nuclear wasteland. You shouldn't grow anything there because you can't avoid the radiation for at least 200,000 years plus. Look, what are you going to link there to UNICEF, which is United Nations, the degenerate United Nations. Japan needs to make the best use of nuclear energy, utilities group head says. So what? Good for them. They said something. Does that mean it's fact now? Apparently so. Dana said he's a batshit lunatic and he shouldn't be published because he's a nuclear crank. Japan needs to make the best use of existing nuclear power capacity to defy soaring electricity. Is artificially inflation, right? Because they refuse to take anything from Russia. The only solution to that, the only outcome of that is going to be inflation. And so the most vulnerable societies who were already vulnerable because of the scandemic are now being purged from the planet. The U.S. is struggling to curb emissions, just lost another nuclear power plant. And Palisade, I can't even pronounce it. No big surprise, I'm so tired. Nuclear plant shuts down 11 days early. Now, they were entitled to millions and millions of dollars of free money, but they had to shut it down anyway because the neutrons have made the site very brittle. The containment is very brittle. And because these are high-pressure reactors, like 1,000 psi, brittle and 1,000 psi doesn't actually work. And the nuclear industry can't handle another meltdown, right? They shouldn't exist. They have no right to exist. They're like, this is, wood chippers are not for wood only. The United States has lost yet another nuclear power plant. Effort to prevent the country's largest source. This is zero carbon electricity. And you always hear it framed exactly that way. The country's largest source of zero carbon. This is absurdness. Nuclear power plants need 2 external coal, gas, or oil plants dedicated to them just to fire up and run. And for 100 years for the decommissioning after they're finished running. And for the decades to build them, they need their own independent power supply for their entire existence from beginning to end. They boil 1 million gallons a minute, so you release an absurd amount of carbon into the environment. But carbon's not an issue. Radioactive fallout is the issue. Global warming is not caused by carbon, for God's sakes. Carbon doesn't travel throughout the entire planet. Radiation does. On the shores of Lake Michigan. Wow. So that lake is poison. And Lake Michigan, of course, all the evaporation from that lake covers the whole country. And it trickles down into the rest of the country. All that drinking water, all those communities. So all of these communities are dependent upon Lake Michigan for their water supplies. And that, you can see where the nuclear power plant, one of them is right there. You got Chicago right across from it, for God's sakes, Milwaukee. Unbelievable, eh? All the victims. If you live within 100 miles of a nuclear power plant, I recommend selling your property and getting further away. If you can physically hear the sirens, the 100 sirens around the nuclear power plants, you are in serious no man's land. If they do studies, they'll find that there's more males born than females, for instance. And after weapons testing, we've seen that worldwide. So the whole population was poisoned. That has to be true for the animal kingdom, the insect kingdom, the bird kingdom too, not just humans. Opened in 1971 and was licensed to operate to 2031. No, it wasn't. It got an extension somewhere along the line. But in 1971, it didn't have a 60-year permit. You sack of shit, lying, disgusting parasites who wrote that. It's nuclear, Dana. That's what they do. They lie. But on Friday, Entergy said it moved its closure up by 11 days after the operators identified a performance issue on a mechanical part of the reactor. Yeah, it's got like 1 million moving parts, for God's sakes. A control rod drive seal. And made the conservative decision to shut down the plant early. These are disease factories for at least another 60 years after they shut it down. Everything is vented. It's absurd. The whole story is absurd. Back in the 60s, they used to try to pipe it underground, eh? From the fuel pools and the emissions. The enduring legacy of a disease factory is nothing to be proud of. Israel is simulating a war with Iran again. Chariots of fire. Israel always got the kookiest names for their war games. Chariot of fires. They're not careful, they'll get Chariot of fire, alright? Nuclear experts reaffirm harm of dumping nuclear contaminated ocean water or contaminated water into the ocean, calls on Japan to stop pressuring opposition. Here's Scumbag Grossi in front of perfect tanks. Why don't we get like an actual video, where the video pans left or right or something like that, or a picture? Why do we always get these close-up, framed, easy to Photoshop pictures for? Nearly half of Canada's population was hit by a derecho. It was unprecedented, the biggest ever seen in Canada. It was a hurricane, literally moved through a large part of the country where hurricanes never go. And the media said it was 131 kilometer an hour gust. If you went and looked at the videos, it's easy 160 miles per hour. Easy. But the media's out to claim it's 130 kilometers an hour. This is Fukushima effect. The supercell storms we've seen since the nuclear meltdown, we've never seen them pre-Fukushima. And storm after storm after storm coming ashore at over 200 miles per hour sustained winds, gusting to oh shit mode. Caused by heating up the planet and the oceans, right? So now when the storm goes over it, it has incredible amount of heat energy that it's never had before. In fact, the numbers we're seeing were only postulated for Mars. We don't have building codes for 200 miles per hour winds or even 150 mile per hour winds. These storms are also, when you hit the coastlines, they stagnate there. They don't lose power, they just stay there and grind out the communities. It's surreal. Saturday's derecho was one of the most destructive and deadly winds in Canada's history. Not one of the most, it's the most. And this is something that went 1,000 kilometers at full speed, never lost any speed. According to the Columbia University plotting tool, it impacted 15.6 million people, 41% of the population. Never has one had a track like this that followed a length of most densely populated corridors in the country. And it was a straight head, which is what derecho is Spanish for straight head. As most of the associated wind damage is the result of straight line winds that blast out of the storm, as opposed to tornadoes that are spinning. Though they can occur also as a side effect. There was no indication that day, which was last week, this would produce an historical event. It was a rather ordinary line of thunderstorms across the border from Michigan and was the most devastating winds to hit Canada in its history. Rather than falling apart as the morning storms often do, they intensified. That's because you destroyed the ability of the land to soak up water by killing the bacteria and the fungus in the ground and the forest, right? And this is also why you have major forest fires, is because you kill the bacteria from radioactive fallout and the fungus, then the foliage doesn't break down. There's nothing there to break down in the foliage. You destroyed the ecosystem, the species. NuScale Power signs agreement with Nuclear Electrica, an owner of the preferred site in Romania, for a small modular reactor that doesn't exist. Why are you building it all the way over there for? Aren't you building it in America or Canada? I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's really interesting that you're going to an impoverished country because you got to get the kinks out of it. So let's go down and poison everybody down there. That's what the industry does. You can't deny it. We committed to continue to offer Romania clean, safe, and again, too cheap to meter, carbon free. Every time I hear it, you just want to pull somebody's ears off the side of their heads. Here's a weird story. Israel will grant benefits to Israelis who helped avert the Chernobyl disaster. That's a bit of a stretch. You forgot to tell Chernobyl that, I guess. Explained there are 1,400 Israelis who took part in averting, which is a fable, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in Ukraine. All of them suffer from a variety of health problems, which often prevents them from receiving life insurance necessary for a housing loan. Which is really interesting, right? Because you were poisoned by Chernobyl. Claiming you averted it is ludicrous. Biden says the U.S. will defend Taiwan if China invades. No, Biden didn't say jack shit. Biden regurgitated what the lobbyists, the military-industrial complex, told him to regurgitate. Well, lo and behold, that's it. He made it. Censorship last night was something else, eh? It'll be legal to skin nuclear scientists in the future, I bet. I'm just saying, right? I say it's probably 5-1 odds on it. All right. I'm burnt out. I got to get up and do it all again tomorrow. Obsolete Optics donated 122. We're grateful for that. Thank you so much. Moving is a nightmare. I forgot. It wasn't that long ago we done this. It's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. Everything hurts. Like, everything hurts. You know, and when everything hurts, that's usually when you get your humor the most. Because you're like, ow, oh, ah. No matter which way you try to move, it's really uncomfortable. And if it's better than screaming or crying, I suppose, right? But you get your sense of humor, I notice, when you're hurting. And it doesn't really hurt until you try to stop. Okay, that's it for today. 3 minutes later, you're like, oh, God, I can't move my legs. I think I might be paralyzed. No, you're just at the end of your day, Dana. So we're half an hour late tonight, I think, or something. I wasn't even going to do a show tonight. I was like, I'm fucked. I can't do nothing. And then my brain was like, no. You can't go give them the nuclear day off because you're not feeling good, Dana. That's not logic at all, Dana. How did our poll go tonight? I wonder. Are nuclear scumbag scientists cowards for not going to the Fukushima nuclear meltdown site for 11 years? Somebody actually said no. No, Dana, the nuclear scientists, they know better. Okay, whatever. Just saying. You don't have to agree with me all the time. But it sure looks suspicious if you don't. No one's agreeing with me. I'm providing you with the documentation. You're agreeing with the documentation. All right, let's get clear about that. I don't have an opinion. And when I do, I'm really clear this is Dana's opinion. Like, it should be legal to skin scientists in the near future. And legal being the correct word there, right? I'm not saying it's gonna be. I am offering 5-1 odds that it will be. and the world wakes up, I'm going to look pretty tame compared to what the world is going to be screaming. It's coming. Albert, Darlene, Richard, Thinker, Port Angeles. Good night, everybody. Patrick, Peaceware, James Lucid. I hope everybody has a great night, great day tomorrow. I won't, but I hope everybody else does. No sense in all of the suffering. And I don't even care. Just get up and go do it, Dana. Stop whining. Dana Nasana. Hi, Dana. Starlight. And I'm just doing a quick shout out if I can. Alicia Don May. I know Colette's out there somewhere. Stephen Young is going to be out there somewhere. Yeah, there's Stephen Young right there. Hi, Stephen. Robert. A super quick shout out tonight. The sooner I can come to a stop, the better. Magic Mushroom Prophet, because the moral is coming hard at me again. Katja, and we got a couple of days of rain coming, but I'm not going to let that stop me. Their rays brutal lately in both ankles. Did I miss anybody? I'm going to end the poll any second here. Don Vincent. Shane Clark. Not my best show, but we got through. Chet Austin. Timber. Looks like I've done a pretty good job. Let's end the poll. 48 votes. Let's bring it up for posterity's sakes. 48 votes. We got 38 thumbs up. Come on, give us 39. At least 40. The censorship is over the top. I want at least 40 because I won't get no more till tomorrow night. Let's call it a night. Did I get everybody? Yeah, I hear you. Philip Wan. Anybody I missed? My apologies. Michael Allport. Barks and meows. After a pass-out session. Must be nice. I'll be doing that myself in about 5 minutes. Marjorie Vincent. Hi, Marge. You bet, honey. Thank you. Okay, I got everybody. Anybody I missed, my apologies. Sue me. Happy birthday, TS. I must have missed that. I'll see that later. Good catch, James. Yeah, we're good to go. Let's call it a night. I gotta go put my head down. I'm happy I got a lot of work done today. That was... Your first day is always the worst. I was packing yesterday. Today I'm moving. It's like, oh my God. I feel like I'm 900 years old today. All good. It'll all be over in another 5 or 6 days anyway. Hopefully. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. See everybody on the dark side. We'll do it again tomorrow night. I'll probably be late again tomorrow night. But I'll be here. God bless. Take care, folks.
Feuer, dunkel, himmlisch
Yeah, good night, everybody. Take care.